Yes, I will. Well, me and Jim, Joe, one of us.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. I'm really grateful for this chance to be as part of the virtual workshop. And like others, I want to thank Divya for having led us in a matter of weeks from our original planned face-to-face workshop to what I think has been a highly successful virtual workshop. So Divya, profound thanks for that. The thing that we've had in common between the original workshop and the virtual version of it is we've had the same set of original submissions, and we've been dealing with the same set of event types. We simply had to look at what kind of event types make sense in a virtual environment compared to the original face-to-face version. Our feeling here is that the sessions that were proposed for the most part have what I would think of as a relatively short shelf life. So when we decided we couldn't meet face-to-face, we felt it was imperative to have a virtual version and to use as many of the original submissions as we could based on the hard work and selection and evaluation of the TPC. So let me move on to the next slide, please, Divya. The thing that I think there are many reasons why our workshops in general have been successful over the years. I think we have a well-deserved reputation for quality. This has, in fact, been the result of close cooperation between two realms. Paul had a chance to play with this presentation and came up with this useful Venn diagram. These are two necessary but not sufficient conditions. We have to have excellence in terms of the content itself. That's the domain of the TPC. And we have to have excellence in terms of the venue, all the things that are easy to take for granted. The setting of the timelines, the communication, the request for sessions, all those things are managed by the marketing working group working hand in glove with the TPC. And that's led by Divya, of course, and closely supported by Joe Bailage, who heads our marketing support group at Nereus. This has been very successful. There's give and get. We get basically what's called a work back schedule and from the marketing team, and it tells the TPC the critical dates it has to meet in order for us to have the right timing of outreach and in general keep things on track for being ready in the March-April timeframe, which has been our history in the past. What I want to do here a little bit is not give short shrift to the logistics team because this is important, and we do have some words here, but I want to just give you a better sense than you may have right now of what the TPC is all about and just quickly how it functions. Really for a couple of reasons, maybe three reasons. One is still, again, to thank them for their very hard work. Also, to understand what the process is really all about, and frankly, to invite you to take part in this in the future. There's no question when this model works. Those of us who've been around for a while used to have what we call the Rolodex approach, which was a couple of people in the OFA who were well connected in the industry, and they'd want to come up with sessions. So they would jump to their Rolodex and say, I know somebody at IBM who's doing something interesting. Let's see if we can cajole them into talk. Well, you know, that was okay, but that was one person's point of view on what seemed to matter. There are many benefits to this approach through the TPC, not the least of which is the remarkably divergent points of view, which give us a chance to look at any proposed session from those multiple points of view and really make the right choice in terms of who to bring in and who to unfortunately leave out in some cases. And by the way, as always, questions are welcome throughout. Divya, next slide, please. So here's my nod to the importance of the logistics team. This is again led, as I was just explaining, by Divya, who's the chair of our marketing working group. For the first time in the history of the OFA, we have a highly effective support group in the form of Nereus, an absolutely first-rate marketing organization. They really allow Divya to have a day job. What Divya gives us is judgment and leadership and vision, and she spent relatively little time on the day-to-day work. She's able to delegate that successfully to this really excellent marketing support group. And they do the stuff that everyone takes for granted. You know, where are we going to meet, when, how do we communicate this out to the world? How do we communicate out to the speakers? How do we manage the call for sessions? All that stuff happens within their domain. So we just couldn't do this without their incredibly important support. Next slide, Divya, please. But back to the TPC itself. you'll see a really interesting life cycle, which again, credit to Paul for coming up with. But there is a well-defined process we go through. We've done this the last few years, and it seems to work out really well. The first is really to come up with what are the anywhere from 4 to 6 themes that we're going to try to focus on during the upcoming workshop. This may seem really obvious, but at times we've had simply too many, and we get lost in the weeds of having too many different things that are sort of all spinning around, and we can't keep straight which ones really matter to us. So having a small number of really important themes has turned out to be a really good thing. And then within each of these themes, we try to slot in the proposals as they come in. And these themes are used to communicate out to potential contributors what our specific areas of interest are. But I want to quickly say this isn't, sort of all we do. We have missed important themes in the past, and we've learned from that. And so when we do miss, we go back and look at the themes and say, well, okay, we need to talk about, RDMA or something like that, or remote persistent memory, something like that, just to make a couple of silly examples. And then we make it a point to reach out and have something there. They also talk about the kinds of events that take place at the workshop itself. We've dealt with BOFs, Meet the Experts, lightning talks, all kinds of things like that, which not many of which translate well to a virtual presentation like this. I was really happy to see that the BOF took place yesterday and it worked extremely well. But obviously Meet the Experts is much more difficult to do here. Industry luminary is harder to deal with, a lot of those kinds of things. So I think we've saved the best of the event types that make sense for the workshop, and we've done a good job of highlighting those. We are a volunteer committee. The very best technologists that we can find that are willing to spend some time with us. It's imperative you understand that membership in the OFA is not required. That would be self-defeating if we were to do it. We really look for the best technologists we can find. We've had incredibly important contributions from people outside of the OFA. Their desire is simply to do the best thing they can from a current technology issues standpoint, and their contribution has just been wonderful. So why we use the TPC? I anticipated my own words by mentioning the Rolodex thing. There was a time that was sufficient, but I think we've gone miles beyond that in terms of having a much better approach, much more comprehensive view of technology from the different points of view we brought into this. Divya, next, please. So this is genius on the part of Paul. Thank you, Paul, for this. We follow pretty much the same path every year. There may be slight differences. The timing may be different a little bit, but we always start out with a call for TPC participants. We have someplace between 10 and maybe 15. Levels of participation vary. We ask for people to be fully involved to the extent that they can, but some people will say that they simply can't attend meetings routinely, but they will take review assignments, for example, and that's important. So if that's what they can offer, we simply take it. We're not proud. We'll take it from anyone. As I mentioned before, the first thing we do is come up with the themes, and I'm explaining to you why that's important. We then use the themes to communicate out via the logistics team and the marketing working group to have the call for sessions. We actually tune something called EasyChair, which is a software product that we use to manage these submissions when they come in, and we simply modify the categories that people can sign up for. I think it's called a radio dial approach within EasyChair. So someone says, here comes a session, and it fits into this predefined theme, or it doesn't fit anywhere, in which case we have to go back and look at it and see what we do about that. We then come up with what the event types will be. Again, do we have BOFs, Meet the Experts, anything else? Then we always have a kind of a soft deadline for submissions, and the world has come to know our subterfuge here. So we set a relatively early-ish deadline for the session proposals, and then we set the hard deadline. And as you can imagine, over the course of a couple of days, we're really busy. We have all kinds of these things coming in, and that's when the TPC group goes kind of nuts. So we have to make a lot of decisions in a very short period of time. The way we do this is we actually we we get each session submission, and I do a simple copy paste from the way it's stored in EasyChair into a Word document. I have a matrix where I make the assignments arbitrarily amongst the TPC members, using only the most basic screen. For example, if it's someone from Intel, I try hard not to have an Intel reviewer just for obvious reasons. But I also send each of these submissions out to the full TPC, because it can happen that someone in the TPC, just by virtue of this random assignment, doesn't know that this submission has come in, and they may have special expertise or special interest, and then they simply pipe up and they become part of the review team. We try awfully hard, and I think we've succeeded every year in having at least 3 reviews. And it's important to explain that we have 2 elements to the review. Again, the assignments are arbitrary, so we ask both for the evaluation from the reviewer and also basically how confident. You know, is this almost your day job, or is it something you've heard of but you don't feel terribly comfortable evaluating? So we look at both of these. What is the evaluation, and what we think of as the strength of the evaluation? And EasyChair can rank the session proposals numerically based on either or both of those criteria. We then rank, order all of these submission proposals, and if they fit, that's terrific. We job done. If we don't have enough, then we see what else we can do to fill the time usefully. If we have too many, then we have some hard choices to make. It's happened in a few cases that we reach out for more information. We don't typically engage a lot with the session proposers. We take their initial session abstract and take it pretty much at face value, and then we make a decision based on that. It's happened at least a few times that we think there's something good there, but frankly, the abstract has been weak. We couldn't find enough there to justify it. So, you know, our belief, our supposition, our intuition is it's good, but we need more before we can actually make a decision. Within the TPC, we communicate completely frankly. The discussion within the TPC we view as being privileged. Otherwise, we feel like if there was someone looking over our shoulder, we'd be less than clearly, completely, what's the word? You know, aggressive and clear, and no concern about feelings being hurt, just trying to be as objective and correct in our evaluations as we can be. We then have to reconcile the session submissions and the previously agreed themes, and we work again with the logistics team to come up with the day-to-day agenda of the workshop, trying to the extent it makes sense to have themes throughout the workshop so that these sessions, where possible, can build on each other. Sometimes sessions lead to a BOF very consciously, so people will have gotten some information during the course of the day, for example, from the sessions, and then they can contribute to the BOF more intelligently than they could had we taken a different approach. Then once the agenda is in place, we're locked and loaded, and for the most part, we're off to the races. It's happened a few times that, you know, babies get born, or car accidents happen, or oh my gosh, a pandemic happens, and, you know, things change. But for the most part, we have a pretty good record of people saying they'll show up, and in fact, they do show up. So that really is how it operates. I don't know if this was widely known, but this is as clear a picture as we can paint of it. I think it's by now a pretty well orchestrated process. It's an extremely rewarding thing to go to. I'll have my final sales pitch on the final slide, but I hope you can see that it's a very thoughtful process from the first day to the last. Next slide, please, Divya. We have made it a point to thank the TPC. You will have seen their names on the screen during our breaks. Nope, back up, please. Each day. For the most part, these are members of the OFA, but again, it's not required. Raghu, for example, from Amazon is not a member of the OFA. He's just one example of an extremely useful contributor who goes out of his way to create terrific content, both in terms of the TPC and in OFA and elsewhere. This is a place where we get, in effect, a $200 per hour consultant for free. We get the benefit of this gentleman's really terrific thinking and industry insights and the rest of it. And that's why it's so important that we have that point of view. So that's kind of where we stand. This is more or less a typical representation of the number of people that are active. And again, most of them are full scale participants. Sometimes people, as I was saying, can only do reviews, and so on and so on. But for the most part, they share the load pretty equally. And then the final slide, please, Divya. Here's my closer. I can see you all standing up and saluting at this point. I'm asking you to join the next TPC. It is work. There's no getting around that, especially during that brutal crunch time. It's also a whole lot of fun. You're doing good, which always makes any of us feel good. And these are some really, really smart people that you are privileged, honestly, to be in. And you wouldn't be there unless you were one of those really excellent people. So it's just huge fun to see people with different points of view, different interests, different even preoccupations, different takes on the importance of technologies. The give and take in this is just fabulous. It's like being in grad school every day. So that's my take on it. I've been privileged to be active in this for the last few years. I hope you have at least some questions as to what this is, and I've piqued your interest at least a little in terms of participating perhaps in the future. You're always welcome. Sylvia, are you getting questions at all?
No questions per se, but I do want to give an opportunity for the TPC members who are online to add comments if they like to. All you need to do is just raise your hand and I'll go ahead and open your mic. We would like to hear from you. There are a few TPC members I can see. Hey, anyone? You like the journey? Don't like the journey?
I'd just like to, Divya, if I could, this is Paul speaking. I'd just like to pipe in with one more piece of the paid political advertisement here. Keep in mind that the TPC effectively is the proxy for workshop participants. So it's the role of the TPC to represent the workshop participants to be sure that the material that's being presented is of value and useful to the community at large. So it's a pretty good reason, a compelling reason to become part of this. It's the way that you ensure that your time spent at the workshop is worthwhile.
I mean, I myself also participated in TPC and I work for Intel, so it has been a wonderful opportunity for me to, I guess, pursue the Intel's, support the strategy that we have internally through the TPC and be visible in the OFA community. It goes both ways. So I was able to take in the feedback from the community and pass it on to the organization and create work that's very useful to this community. It goes both ways. We are giving back at the same time. There's always something useful for our own work.
Okay, well, if that's it, Divya, thanks so much for this chance to speak on the TPC. And I'm very grateful for, again, the TPC's work. It's essential, and looking forward to the next round.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. All right, I think that